Having endured one of the most insidious insurance fraud, inheritance theft heists one could imagine, I've taken the time to do my own research about these case types and collect stories, gather information about how these deceptive, layered schemes are effective. And what I have discovered is there is a large number of inheritance theft cases that go undetected and unprosecuted. And I've also identified in my research thus far some commonalities, some factors, 7 factors to be exact, that exist in each of these cases. The first commonality I identified is that oftentimes the rightful beneficiary, or the heir, is the black sheep of the family, or the family scapegoat, who's already targeted anyway. These tend to be the family members that choose to remove themselves from the fray, to not be part of the toxicity and the drama. And that may be perhaps why they're chosen to be the beneficiary, because they're the most entrusted of the group. The second interesting commonality I've identified is oftentimes the beneficiary's ex-partner will be involved with the family members committing the theft. So they'll be co-conspirators. So there will be a connection where there should be none, in the promise of a cut of the proceeds if the ex-partner discloses information, whether it be true or not, about the beneficiary and attempts to paint them in a false narrative to achieve the goal. The third interesting commonality is there's often a religious group involved, particularly in persecution of the beneficiary, and also for the purpose of networking and using their web of resources to pry into the beneficiary's life, to participate in gang stalking, to have increased volume of those providing false testimony, false reports, to support the false narrative that's being painted in large numbers. That leads to the fourth commonality, which is the gang stalking, which is a big factor. The character assassination and the smear campaign is achieved through stalking, monitoring, prying into the privacy rights of the beneficiary in order to paint a narrative that this beneficiary doesn't hold the capability or stability to handle the resources left to them. So there will be attacks on their finances, housing, their career, their job, anything they can do to strip that beneficiary of existing stability to further paint the narrative that, see, they can't handle what was left to them. It should go to someone else, with the promise that that someone else is going to share a cut with several other people. Oftentimes, these smear campaigns, these character assassinations will be of extreme lengths, where they will make false narratives of the beneficiary having substance issues, mental health issues, in some severe cases, a provider who's never even met the beneficiary will provide false medical records or false documentation or testimony to support these narratives, quid pro quo, with the promise that they're going to receive something when that inheritance is provided to the wrongful person. Another interesting factor is that no one will ask the beneficiary their story. The goal is to isolate them so they have no one in their corner, so they have no support. And the goal is not to reveal the truth, it's to mask the truth. So it's important that the credibility of that beneficiary be assaulted in every way, so that in the event that they're ever questioned or testify, the credibility's been taken from them, or they have less character witnesses because so many people are quid pro quo participating in smear campaigns and telling false stories about them because they're being promised a cut as well. Another factor is that law enforcement tends to be non-responsive in these situations. And these situations, these thefts can become quite severe in lethality. There can be attempts to unalive the beneficiary, or if there is an insurance policy that's been taken out on them. And by isolating them, it makes it much easier for them to go missing. In extreme cases, there is breaking and entering, hacking, property damage, poisoning. Pretty wild things occur. And so when a beneficiary is going to law enforcement explaining this long list of things they're experiencing, and then you have this larger group telling the story, oh, don't believe them, they don't have credibility, they're not stable. That leaves the victim without any recourse or any help. And in some extreme cases, law enforcement is actually participating in the heist. They're part of the church organization, or they're part of the community that is trying to achieve the goal of making sure this beneficiary doesn't receive what was left to them. Probate court judges are relying on family members to serve, notify, disclose, and to be honest. And if they're not notifying the other family members, sometimes people who've been victimized by these types of thefts may never know that they were a recipient, or may not find out for years later when they have had the time expired to take action. And it would require a lot of resources to unearth what's been done, because the layers of deception are so great in some of these extreme cases. So I guess my overall conclusion would be, we hear stories that when a family member passes away, that the family dynamic changed, that there was fighting over a will, or it brought out the envy and greed and the ugly sides of people. There's truth to that. And if someone is coming forward and saying, all these things are happening to me, it's critical that we listen and believe them, and not say, that's just too long of a list of crimes, or that sounds too extreme, because these things really do happen. I never in a million years thought that this would be my life story, and that these would be my experiences, and that I would be betrayed by people that I loved and cared about in the way that I have. So there's definitely a need for oversight and change to the system, so that this type of victimization can't go on the way it has in my case.